Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, December 30th. Looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we see a broad, ill-formed gale completely filling the western half of the North Pacific, producing seas up to 26 feet, 30 feet in one spot, but mainly effectively, 26 feet, aimed pretty well at Hawaii and at the U.S. West Coast. This is what we think is the beginning of a more progressive storm or surf development pattern. As usual, we'll start this week's tour looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they do form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, that is a dip in the jet, just like this right here. That helps create a counterclockwise flow aloft in the atmosphere and down at the surface, and that is the hallmark of low pressure. Of course, low pressure generates wind. Winds generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, turn into swell. Swell, when it hits your beach, turns into surf. We have actually a pretty impressive jet stream pattern here. Consolidated jet, not split, and winds up to 210 knots, pushing off Japan, pushing over the dateline into the western Gulf, and then here at about 165 west, it splits, with the northern half pushing up into Alaska, the southern half of the jet pushing south over Hawaii, and then into Baja and Southern California. Typically what you get in between these split jet stream patterns is high pressure, like right there. And that is what is making things high and dry in California at the moment, and also generating a fair amount of north winds at exposed breaks over northern and central California. All right, let's put this into motion, see what's to happen. Jet continues solid Monday. I mean, very impressive jet here. Just this broad kind of trough, though. It's not the kind of trough that really digs down and then swings up. And so that's what's not helping to support gale formation. Yeah, there's a gale up here in the northern Gulf, but I mean, just not super well organized, not getting into storm status, not really helping to produce meaningful, long period, large swell. But anyway, continuing on, we're into Wednesday. Jet still very consolidated, and we believe the reason the jet is doing so well is the active phase of the MJO is building here in the West Pacific. We'll get to that in a minute. But also notice the split point. We're into Wednesday night. The split point was at 165 west. Now, Wednesday night, it's at about 140 west. And as this goes further out, you see holding right around 135, something like that. But also notice a new trough developing here off Kamchatka. We're on Thursday night, Friday morning. Another one developing in the Gulf of Alaska. That should help to support maybe some sort of gale formation. As we go out into Friday and into Saturday, still the jet just raging the split point. Basically, it's not even split anymore. It looks like a wall of wind, upper-level wind energy is getting ready to push into California on Saturday. And that should break down that massive high-pressure system and the persistent north winds that have just been going and going nonstop for about a week now. Here we are. We're into Sunday. We're a week out. Nice trough in the Gulf of Alaska. Another off Kamchatka. Jet still solid. Down at 33 south or 35 south, pretty far to the south. So all we need now is just a couple of good troughs, and we're in business in terms of storm, upper level support for storm production. All right, let's go take a look down at the surface. Here we are, surface level pressure, surface level winds, as expected. Broad gale low, filling probably 2/3 of the northern North Pacific. The problem is it's kind of ill-formed. Yeah, 958 millibar low right over the North Dateline region, but fetch here, fetch here, fetch here, but not all consolidated. And the reason for that is the trough is kind of this broad, ill-formed trough. It's not like a defined trough, cradling this low. It's just sort of blasting straight off Japan with maximum winds. Anyway, that low continues east and kind of peters out as we get into Tuesday. Maybe little lingering bits of it try to organize in the northern Gulf. Notice high pressure still in place here off of California on Wednesday. North winds down the coast, but not as strong as they were. And then the high starts moving. You see, 1036, 1032 millibar per high. It moves inland, sets up over the Great Basin. That's typically the pattern you want to see offshores in California, down in Southern California. And with the high out of the picture and the upper level trough pushing east, odds for storm production should improve. And there you go, boom, just like that. 45 knot winds on Thursday morning forecast off of the Pacific Northwest. Another one north of Hawaii with 45 knot winds as well. Certainly, both those systems could generate swell, mainly aimed at the U.S. West Coast. Notice the high pressure just barely hanging on there and continuing to hang on into Friday. And then what happens as we get into Saturday? Looks like south wind pattern, local low pressure, the high's gone. That would open the storm door, theoretically. Let's see. And low pressure. Low pressure, low pressure, all with fetch. Certainly potential. Oh, and 50 knot winds as we get into Sunday off the Kurils. Another tiny area, 50 knot winds in the Gulf of Alaska. And where are we? You can see it looks like the storm track to be waking up, let's say 5.5 days out, and just getting better from there. This is good news. Let's go take a look at the wave models. All right, so what's the effect of winds over the ocean's surface? Well, for sure, 26-foot seas there over a broad area off Japan, targeting Hawaii. Swell certainly expected for there. And also 30, 31-foot seas up here, but they're kind of aimed not really in our forecast area, which generally is this area right here. So we'll just put this into motion. You can see seas still continue as we get into Monday. 26, 28-foot seas pushing towards Hawaii. Hawaii got a nice little run of swell out of this. You actually see the leading edge on Tuesday moving into the Hawaiian Islands. California, a bit far away. Whatever swell will result, probably be pretty well decayed. But then as we get into Thursday, things get much more interesting for California. Two systems start instantly developing 32-foot seas off of Oregon, 18Z on Thursday, aimed at North and Central California. Another system north of Hawaii with we'll say 32 or 33-foot seas. Same basic deal. Those continue in, targeting mainly the storms themselves or the gales themselves, pushing towards the Pacific Northwest, but you can see swell energy radiating down into California. And then things get very busy. Lots of small systems. A little area off of Southern California here with 24-foot seas. Another system nearly on the date line. Same deal, 26-foot seas. Another system off Japan. Put this into motion. These two kind of build looking pretty solid a week out. Here, whoops, we'll go right there. 39-foot seas there, 30-foot seas. Short of it, lots of opportunity for swell production. At a week out, all these details, at best, sketchy, but it certainly suggests that with the active phase of the MJO setting up, the jet stream raging, the jet not splitting, then you move clearly into a frame when there is much better opportunity for swell production. And then here we go. There's our 180-hour view, so you get it. All right, let's move on. What's the local wind forecast? Is high-level wind, just sort of a general wind. We're not going down spot by spot. But clearly, high pressure, 1032 millibars, creates a clockwise flow in the northern hemisphere. That's what's driving north winds down the California coast. Only the most protected spots, down in Southern California, maybe Monterey Bay. Everywhere else was just a blown mess today on Sunday. Hawaii, trades in control, 15 knots, not too bad because the center of the high is mainly off California and well east of Hawaii. Put this into motion, get into Monday. The gradient fires up even stronger on Monday. 30 knot north winds off of North and Central California. Trades 15 knots for Hawaii. We continue into Tuesday. Now notice the high looks like it's starting to move inland. There we go. 1034, 1036 millibar high inland. Little bit of it lingering offshore. So this is on the far west Pacific is the active phase of the MJO. The inactive phase down on the equator here south of California. That's typically how this game gets played. The inactive phase moves out, high pressure disappears. That opens the storm door for precipitation, and it opens the storm production door for the North Pacific as the active phase makes its way on the equator from west to east towards California. All right, and so what do we get? Yeah, it looks like a light offshore flow for California later Tuesday into Wednesday. Trades still, 15 knots or so for the Hawaiian Islands. Go into Thursday, then the local storms. Now the deal is little lingering remnants of this, the Great Basin high, hold off the coast, drive the storm track north. You get the swell, see the fetch aimed right at California from both these systems, but hopefully the high holds just enough to create still winds or light offshore winds. Trades east-northeast for Hawaii. Into Thursday, light winds for California. Into Friday, light winds. But then notice, low pressure forecast to develop here. Oh, notice, high pressure here. That's driving harder trades into the Hawaiian Islands into Friday. Let's see what this little low does. According to this, then we get south winds by Saturday for all the California coast, down even into Southern California. Nearly a week out, not sure if that's completely believable. Then the low falls south some. These would be southeast winds into California into Sunday, and then maybe down to light to calm, light offshore Sunday a week out. And look at this, another broad, complex gale trying to organize a week out, filling the Gulf of Alaska. Interesting, with light winds along the California coast. So, interesting pattern. Let's go see precipitation. And we're really focusing here on California. We're looking for any sign of snow, maybe some flurries on Monday in the Sierra, but even that, with high pressure in control here, see it just covering this entire area here. Just no chance for precipitation, so the focus would be on British Columbia initially, and even that barely making it down to Whistler until Wednesday, and then things get a lot more active. We'll see where the dividing line is. We're kind of watching like the middle of Oregon or so. Big bomb of a storm here forecast for British Columbia and maybe down into Washington some. High pressure still holding down, so like Montana, that area, Wyoming, not so much precip. And still, there sort of backdoor front pushing snow up into Tahoe, perhaps. But we're a week out. That's Sunday. Tahoe, the entire Sierras, and then where are we at? A week out still. Looks like high pressure has a lock on California. We need precipitation in here. We need some snow. Not yet. Inactive phase of the MJO still hanging even a week out from now south of California. All right, let's move on. What's going on long term? What's happening specifically with the MJO and maybe El Nino? All right, so first we'll go into our MJO analysis. Normally start with looking at winds across the equator, but we can't do that. The government shutdown has affected some of the components of NOAA's constellation of websites, and the TAO buoy array site is down, attributable to the shutdown. So we'll make do with what we can get our hands on. But here we go. 850 millibar wind anomalies. That's winds up about 4,000 feet, which is a pretty good proxy for what's going on down at the surface. These aren't actually winds. These are differences in wind for this time of year. What we're looking for is signs of the active phase of the MJO in what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. So there's Australia. There's New Guinea there. The equator, 0 degrees, runs right along this line here. There's South America. So we're looking at the area from 170 west, right here, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, over to about the Philippines, right in there. We're looking for west anomalies, and this was on December 24th. Yeah, western anomalies, but limited to the far west Pacific. We just go day by day. You get the general sense that westerly anomalies are building. There's sort of this east anomalies in most of the Kelvin wave generation area, but westerly anomalies trying to be certainly strong over the maritime continent. One would say, as of the 28th of December, the active phase of the MJO was over the maritime continent. The inactive phase of the MJO was maybe somewhere along in here, something like that. So about south of California, which is about what we were expecting. But looking at actual winds, okay, so this is right there. That's New Guinea there. Okay, where's the date line is right here. Here's 3 degrees. The dotted is 5 degrees north and south of the equator. So this is the Kelvin wave, the core of the Kelvin wave generation area. And actual winds, we see there's actually westerly winds in the Kelvin wave generation area today. So that supports the thesis that there's westerly anomalies in a good portion of this area. And here's the more eastern extent of the Kelvin wave generation area over just, there's the date line, and just a couple of degrees, 15 degrees east of there. We got east anomalies, but not very strong. So yeah, probably westerly anomalies or neutral anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area. So what's the forecast for the next week? Okay, so this is 850 millibars zonal wind anomalies. You can see it right there. We'll go back down. So this is the whole planet on one chart. The date line runs right down the middle of the page. Kelvin wave generation area between these two tick marks here. So you can just go back in time and you can see blues are easterly anomalies, and they were in control. That was the inactive phase of the MJO, and it faded, and well, it actually moved east into the core of the Kelvin wave generation area through Christmas time. But now it's starting to ease off, and for the next week it's expected to ease off to the east. And look at this, westerly anomalies associated with the active phase of the MJO building into the western Kelvin wave generation area, we'll say starting about December 25th, right around Christmas, and continuing to build to the east, supposed to get pretty strong right in the core of the Kelvin wave generation area a week from today, January 6th. So something to look forward to. That should certainly impart a lot. So the active phase of the MJO pushes or builds energy into the jet stream, feeds it. The jet stream's already very strong. This would only push more energy into it, and that in turn would help support storm formation, mainly in the area in the western Pacific. As the active phase of the MJO moves east, though, then the core of the storm generation window would move further and further to the east, eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. I'm sorry, the Gulf of Alaska. So let's look a little bit longer term. Outgoing long wave radiation charts. Another way to look at components of the MJO. The blues are negative anomalies, meaning less sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface. That would be the active phase of the MJO, right where we expect it to be here, right over the maritime continent. The inactive phase of the MJO, okay, south of Hawaii. That would explain the jet stream being split somewhere right about here, with a split jet stream, over California and off of California, and a consolidated jet stream pattern north of where the active phase of the MJO is. And if you notice this, per the statistic model, the active phase of the MJO is to, over the next 2 weeks, get pretty strong and be centered right in the core of the Kelvin wave generation area 2 weeks out. If one were looking for a window for significant storm production, I would say 2 weeks from now, that would be the prime time. Let's go take a look at the GEFS model, and it's saying basically the same thing. Maybe, oops, do it this way. Maybe not quite as strong as the statistic model suggests, but still very solid. Inactive phase completely disappearing. That would mean that the high pressure system would become very weak off of California. So then at some point you get into this dual pattern where, yeah, you have all the storms, but then you also have weather pushing into the California coast. And that would not be so good for making good conditions for surfing. Then we take a look at the upper level model. And now there's something very interesting here going on. Clearly, yes, the active phase of the MJO is defined here almost over New Guinea at this point, and this model runs maybe a week or so ahead of what really goes on at the surface. This is the area favorable for precipitation, the greens, which one can loosely equate to the active phase of the MJO. So, but notice, very, very strong active phase of the MJO through pushing into Central America through January 24th, followed by a very strong inactive phase of the MJO moving into the West Pacific, January, let's say 20th or so, and into Central America on February 6th, followed by another strong active phase of the MJO. If El Nino were of any strength and any solidity, typically the MJO gets weaker and weaker and weaker. What this week's chart is saying is the MJO is supposed to be building significantly and holding for the next 40 days. Whether it be active or inactive phase, strong MJO signal that suggests that whatever El Nino was going on is dying quickly. And then the CFS model. This is 1 month model, 850 millibar wind, same deal. Date line running right down here. Kelvin wave generation area, the main area we're interested between these two tick marks going down. You can see the reds, past history of where westerly anomalies, or either the active phase of the MJO, or at least El Nino-like pushes of westerly winds capable of generating Kelvin waves, and Kelvin waves feed El Nino development. And here we go. Strong active phase of the MJO. This was in the Indian Ocean, but here we are. The cut right here is about where the West Pacific starts. And that's today. Westerly anomalies moving into the core of the Kelvin wave generation area, expected to hold solid into about January 12th, then fading. The black solid contour is the active phase of the MJO, but westerly anomalies still holding in the Kelvin wave generation area, offering support for storm development, just not as strong as in this window. You see over here in the Indian Ocean, the dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO, trying to build, but still not even reaching into the West Pacific by January 26th. And then finally, the 3-month CFS model. Now, this is a significant departure from what we've been looking at in the past. This is past performance down here, the Kelvin wave generation area between here and here, just going right up through the chart. And we're not even going to look at what's been happening, but you notice westerly anomalies are supposed to completely dissolve by about February 8th or so, something like that, where all for months this model has been saying westerly anomalies, as far as you can see, building El Nino, all that. All of a sudden, it's completely backed off on that. Let's overlay the MJO. Here's our strong active phase of the MJO, solid contours here. Now look in the past. Look at how weak the MJO has been. And this one is saying a strong active phase of the MJO followed by a weak inactive phase. We suspect this is way undercalling the strength of the inactive phase of the MJO and way undercalling the strength of the subsequent active phase supposed to happen in the March time frame. Let's overlay the low pass filter here. Oh, and look at this. This has changed significantly too. I mean, just in the past 2 to 3 days, we had 3 contours here. This is the low pressure bias that was responsible, or supposed to be responsible, for building El Nino. And we knew that the third contour line was supposed to stub off, and it did on December 17th. But then the model had been hinting that it would come back, but now it's saying that's even gone, that it's still a low-pressure bias into March, but just not nearly as strong. That would account for the sort of fading El Nino-ish pattern, return of stronger phases of the MJO, and maybe a more pronounced pattern of storminess and then not storminess, and etc. So, kind of interesting here. All right, let's move on. All right, so we'll put this in motion here. This is subsurface temperature profiles. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. This data is obtained from the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator, 2 degrees north and south of the equator, whole way across the Pacific Ocean, used for monitoring the development of El Nino. But what you also get to see is sea surface temperature anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. You can see warm water has been in play all winter, from the West Pacific to the East Pacific, and this warm water flow from west to east, those are Kelvin waves, pockets of warm water pushing off to the east, erupting off of the Galapagos, and then that warm water erupting on the surface, getting caught by the trades and pushing back to the west, creating a warm pool here on the ocean surface along the equator. Right now, you see, okay, here's the final frame, December 24th. This is the last little pocket of warm water here, we think. But, so this is the remnants of Kelvin wave 2 here pushing in to the Ecuador coast. Maybe another little pocket back here around south of Hawaii, basically 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, maybe 2 to 3 degrees above normal, something like that. Now the next question is, with the active phase of the MJO building and westerly anomalies building in the West Pacific, will that actually take more warm water from the interior of the maritime continent, dump it into the Pacific Ocean, and create a Kelvin wave? This might be Kelvin wave number 3. It might be an extension of Kelvin wave number 2. But say we'll call it Kelvin wave number 4. Way too early to know, but it'll be interesting to see. We suspect probably not, but it's a little bit too early to know. Sea level anomalies here. Okay, so this is, let's see, there's South America, there's Mexico, there's New Guinea there. So what we're doing is looking at, looking for a bump on the ocean surface, okay? Now that would mean if you have warm water at depth, warm water expands, and it basically causes the ocean surface to rise a little bit. This is from JSON-2 satellite data. Strip all the waves out, strip the tides out, strip wind waves out, and you see we have 5 centimeter, almost 10 centimeter bump there, and buried in a broad area of 5 centimeters on the equator, pretty much filling the entire equator other than a little pocket there and a little pocket there. And you also get the sense that water is flowing out of the maritime continent into the Pacific. This is kind of the hallmark of El Nino, but not strongly so, very weak. It just suggests weak, warm anomalies under the equator, and sort of that's what the other chart we saw says as well. Upper ocean heat anomalies. So this is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here. This is temperature anomalies in the upper 300 meters of the ocean surface. And you put it in time fashion here. Back to January a year ago, you can see a little Kelvin wave, warm water pushed off to the east. Didn't even make it to Ecuador, faded out. Here's the first, we'll call in this Kelvin wave number 1, pushed off in the West Pacific in February, March, traveled the whole way across the Pacific, erupted off of Ecuador in the June time frame. A far stronger one in the September time frame, and all this warm water is pushed to the east due to the active phase of the MJO and westerly anomalies in the West Pacific. So if you're wondering, why are we so concerned all the time about westerly anomalies and winds in the West Pacific, it's because not only do they are a sign of the active phase of the MJO, which feeds the jet stream, but when it happens, it also helps create Kelvin waves, and Kelvin waves are early signs of El Nino, and when you have warm water moving to the east, that feeds the jet stream, helps change the upper atmospheric circulation, makes it more favorable for storm production and swell production. See, that cool water, that was La Nina, and the past 2 years there hadn't been any surf. Now we're into this warmer regime. Yes, there is more surf. It's not exactly ideal, but at least we're moving in the right direction. So that was Kelvin wave number 2. We're seeing something here. We don't know whether that's, and this was almost, we'll call this Kelvin wave 2.5 here, which is pushing east. Officially, it's probably just a part of Kelvin wave number 2, but we sort of saw it as an individual event. And then there's something else going on here, maybe the development of Kelvin wave number 3 or 4, depending on how you want to number it. We'll see how this plays out in the weeks ahead. All right, so what's going on at the ocean surface? Well, we have some warm there. So there's New Guinea there. We have warm anomalies, generic warm anomalies on the equator. And then here's really kind of the area that matters. It's this area from here out to here. And we see warm anomalies from Ecuador the whole way almost to the date line, but they're not nearly as strong as they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and fading. And there was warm water all down here along Peru. That's all gone, and it was barely hanging on anyway. It looked kind of semi-respectable for about 2 weeks of this whole quote-unquote El Nino cycle, and that's all gone now too. So if this is an El Nino, it's the weakest El Nino we've ever seen. Basically, there's no way it qualifies for an El Nino, and it's fading fast. Yeah, it's getting torn apart by the inactive phase of the MJO, but we don't really see anything that suggests a significant El Nino signal at all. We've been saying that about this quote-unquote El Nino for months now, and it just appears to be falling apart, and it just isn't going to make the grade. Sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days. Yeah, a little bit of warming off of Peru here. A little bit of warming around the Galapagos, but no marked warm signal. A couple little pockets of cooling, but just kind of a neutral pattern. Nothing significant happening. And here's the zoom-backed overview trend. Clearly, there's warm water on the equator. This is very good. The official El Nino monitoring region from 120 west here to 170 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Temperatures are warmer than normal, but not significantly so. And there's no clear signs of any like big anvil, which would be typical if you had a real El Nino going on here, a significant El Nino. In fact, there's cooling down here off Peru. A little bit of cooling developed closer to the coast. It's just generic warming. It's not a strong signal at all. Nothing that one would call El Nino. Here's the temperature trend, the Nino 1.2 index, which is the area off of the Galapagos and Ecuador and Peru, that area. And you can see, yeah, it was warmer at times, but starting about mid-December, temperatures just started to plummet. And as of right now, they're at 0.029 above normal. So dead neutral off in this area. That's clearly no sign of El Nino. And then in the official El Nino monitoring region west of there, from 120 west to 170 west, you see temperatures have been, at one point they were up to 1.5 degrees above normal. Today, they're at 0.780. But if you look at the trend since, was this 3 months worth, October, November, and December, you could draw a line probably right about here, something like that. Let's say 0.65 or 0.7, so not even 3/4 of a degree above normal. If that went on for 5 months, yes, it would officially be declared an El Nino. But based on what we're seeing, that isn't going to happen. These temps we think are going to fall down somewhere at about 0.2 or 0.3 of a degree above normal here in the next couple of weeks and probably settle in right about there. So just not looking like El Nino. But El Nino is not just about surface temperatures. The atmosphere above the waters on the equator have to respond to warming temperatures. You have to have more precipitation. You have to have more evaporation. You have to have changes in pressure. And so let's see if that's happening. This is the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Tahiti and Darwin. When pressure is lower in Tahiti, that's in the Pacific Ocean, and higher over Darwin, over the Indian Ocean, then the index goes negative. Well, the daily index right now is positive 6.64, and if you just look down here, it's been positive for a month. Clearly no sign of El Nino in this index. The 30-day average, this strips the noise out. Today is at plus 9.46. If anything, that's sort of suggesting a pretty solid inactive phase of the MJO, and you see it's been steadily rising. The 90-day average here is at plus 4.50. This is what you use looking for El Nino. If we were in El Nino, this should be about negative 0.9. Instead, it's positive 4.5. And if anything, just look at the numbers here. It went from negative a month ago to positive now. So clearly, no sign of El Nino anywhere in this index. Let's go look at one other. And then there's the ESPI index. Instead of differences in pressure north of Darwin and north of Tahiti, this is precipitation amounts. When you have more precipitation than normal here over in the Pacific, the index goes positive, right? Okay, and that would be a sign of warming waters here. Today's index, minus 0.21. So a little bit less than normal precipitation here. Clearly, no sign of El Nino. So basically, we're declaring this, whatever it was El Nino thing, if it wasn't dead before, it is dead now. It just ain't happening. The good news is, though, we still have warm temperatures. It isn't La Nina. It's just neutral biased warm, and that's way better than any kind of La Nina. We think La Nina's dead and isn't coming back. And we might be moving into this sort of a 2 or 3 year kind of just generic warm pattern here in the Pacific, and that's good. That does great for the jet stream. That gets us into a normal pattern, and after 2 years of La Nina, we'll take that any day of the week. And finally, the sea surface temperature forecast in the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region per the CFS model. This is completely unbelievable. Here we are, basically, 1st of January. It says temperatures are 1 degree above normal. We know that not to be the case. They're at best, 0.6 or 0.7 above normal, something like that. And if anything, expected to be crashing. This model says they're going to hold through April and then only go down to 0.75. Our guess is that's by July, maybe end of August, early September. We think in reality we'll be down at about somewhere down around here, 0.2 of a degree above normal, something like that. But hey, warm is better than cold for sure. We'll take it. We just think this model's hyping the heck out of El Nino, and El Nino isn't happening, and we're okay with that. We can live with that. Let the ocean recharge for a couple more years, build up some more latent heat energy, so then we can have a real El Nino a couple years out. So the good news is the active phase of the MJO building pretty solid in the West Pacific and forecast to be pretty strong indeed. Part 2, jet stream, solid as can be, supporting gale development, just not super organized. And looking at the wave models, a whole series of gales, if not storms, are forecast to evolve. In fact, there's a broad system right now in the West Pacific, swell on the way for Hawaii. Nothing huge, but solid and long-lasting. And then the pattern shifts east a little bit, with California getting to share in some of the wealth, at least from a surf perspective. Yes, for sure. Terms of snow, not so much. We didn't go look at the models, but there's not a whole lot to see, so we're not going to bother, waste your time looking at that. But for right now, it looks like plenty of surf is on the way. Nothing huge and oversized, but solid relative to California and Hawaii, and that's good news. So that's it for this week. We'll do it again next week, same time, same channel. Happy New Year. Have a safe one. Take care of yourself. Go get some waves, and we'll do it again next week. Thanks for watching.